of issues with JIDE. Here we'll talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our national and political landscape and how these impact us positively or otherwise. I'm Ibrahim Shita. Today on the show, it is exposed America accused of sponsoring Boko Haram. In the course of the program, we take your questions, but first, subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop your questions in the comment section. It's important to mention that we can only read comments with human names and the ones based on the subject matter. I have joining me via Zoom the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade Otitoju. Good to see you, BKO, this evening. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Ibrahim. Good to do this with you. Very lovely to our viewers.
That's right. Now, a U.S. congressman, Scott Perry, made headlines by alleging that USAID funds were funneled to Boko Haram and other terror groups. So this claim has sparked debate about oversight mechanisms in foreign aid distribution. Given that the USAID has historically worked to counter extremism and the like, how plausible is it that funds could have been diverted to groups like Boko Haram? PKO.
Well, I do not have evidence to support what Scott Perry, the Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, said. But America has a history of subversion, a history of making life difficult for third world countries, especially countries that are doing well, that the leadership shows a good level of independence. And there are things that have happened that would make me believe that indeed Scott Perry was saying the truth. Sometime around 2011, Nigerian clergymen led by Orishejafo, who was the leader of CAN and PFN, went to the US Congress and presented a paper pushing for the American government to designate Boko Haram as a terrorist group so that its funding can be frustrated by the US government. They campaigned on the floor of the US Congress, but the Americans declined. They refused to designate Boko Haram as a terrorist group. In fact, the then US envoy to Nigeria on the floor of the Congress disagreed with the Nigerian clergymen led by Odeshejafo. And there are three US agencies that naturally should agree on such a matter. The State Department, the FBI, as well as the CIA. But what we saw was that the State Department opposed the idea of designating Boko Haram as a terrorist group, that its funding should be tracked so that it will be denied of the oxygen that it needed desperately to continue its killing campaign in Nigeria. Churches were being attacked. Remember the Christmas Day bombing? Churches were targeted. So it wasn't a surprise to me that those Christian clergymen felt it was necessary to take the campaign to the US to see what they could do to help us stop the funneling of funds, to Boko Haram. Boko Haram Boko Haram led by Shekau became affiliated to ISIS, and for that reason, it was naturally entitled to funding by ISIS. And Boko Haram even adopted the ISIS logo. So you see the ISIS logo on its map. Now, after this, the government also made moves to buy weapons from the Americans, game-changing weapons that could have made a big difference in the war against terror. The Americans bluntly refused to sell weapons to Nigeria, citing the so-called Leahy Law, which, in their view, the weapons could be used to kill people who are not terrorists, could be used to attack activists, pro-democracy activists, and the rest of them. They didn't give us, they didn't sell weapons to us. And when we tried to buy weapons through the third party, I remember the Chinook helicopters, the US Chinook helicopters has the capacity, can be used for troop insertion, and it can also be used, it can be fitted with a gunner, so it can be used in offensive capability. It can also be used to as an air ambulance. So this Chinook helicopter was very, very important. So, so invariably, the Americans reached out to the third party elements that were trying to buy weapons from and told them that they should not sell to us. For example, if America sold weapons to Israel in the first instance, Israel cannot resell that weapon to a third party unless it got permission from the US authorities. So our attempt to buy Chinook helicopters at that time were frustrated. It was when Donald Trump came into office that he then decided to sell the Tucano bombers to us. He brushed aside the Leahy law. He got influential Republicans to lobby the Congress to allow Nigeria to buy the Tucano jets, which really helped us because of the precision and the accuracy of the Tucano jets. So, if you are interested in defeating terror, why wouldn't you sell weapons to Nigeria? I think that all along, the some Republican elements had been uncomfortable with the activities of U.S. Agencies outside of their country. You can see Elon Musk, whom Donald Trump appointed as the to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, even criticized USAID, alleging that it engages in rogue operations. What do we mean by rogue operations? The sort of thing that CIA also does in some countries that are deemed unfriendly to the US, including regime change and all that. We saw what happened in Libya. Today, Libya has not recovered. All the kind of things that we are talking about happened in Syria. It happened in Yemen. It happened in Sudan. In all of these countries, we've seen how the Americans have been trying to make sure that peace does not reign in those countries. And don't forget, in November 2009, the Americans requested to be allowed to set up a permanent base in Nigeria. Of course, our president at the time, Umar Yaradua, declined, said he was not going to agree to that. And not long after that, Boko Haram activities were stepped up, and Nigeria has not recovered from that. Now, the USAID has reported that he spent 2.8 billion naira on Nigeria between 2022 and 2024. But people are asking the question, where is the evidence of this kind of money? Perhaps this kind of money was part of what was used to sponsor insurgency within our country. So when a congressman from America, this one is not a Russian, when an American says this is what our country has been doing, then we have no reason in the world to simply dismiss what they are saying. On the 20th of January, Donald Trump issued an executive order suspending all U.S. foreign aid for 90 days. And in doing that, he cited concern about global destabilization among other concerns. So Trump was worried that some of the so-called foreign aid that America gives countries are actually being used to cause crisis across the globe, what we call global destabilization. And nobody is actually doing sufficient vetting to ascertain that these monies are not going into the hands of establishment bandits and other people, including terrorists. Between 2014 and 2023, you said release 7.8 billion to Nigeria. Now, it claimed that in 2024 that he spent so much money on education, humanitarian affairs, and the rest. But the USAID has continued to come under attack for allegedly funding organizations linked to terrorist groups. It's difficult to simply dismiss some of these allegations because the country has a history of subverting countries, the leadership of countries that it does not like. So now people are calling for investigation of USAID claims of having spent 2.8 billion between 2022 and 2024 in Nigeria, whereas our people cannot see the evidence of that. Yes, the Southwest is safe. People argue that Southwest is largely safe because a lot of their interests and investment are actually here. Many of their citizens actually live in the Southwest, especially Lagos. And Perry even cited USAID's reported funding of $136 million for building 120 schools in Pakistan. And he's saying that these schools do not exist. So where did the money go? That is the question. Where did the money go? So these Americans, these Republicans are convinced that over the years, some of these
Right.
look at Sudan, for example. Look at what is going on in Sudan. Look at a country like Somalia, where you expect that people share the same religion, the same ethnicity, at least will be able to come together as one people. But there's no peace. Somalia is 100% Muslim, yet there's no peace in that country, and they continue to fight one another. So regime change, America believes that if a government is not on its side, that there has to be regime change. It does not also want to see African countries prosper so that they will continue to be dependent on America and the West generally. That is what is called neocolonialism, where countries remain beholden to their colonial masters. So I believe that the claims by the you said has to be investigated thoroughly. The claims made by Scott Perry, the U.S. congressman, has to be investigated because the perpetual insurgency that is going on in our country has, in my view, there is uh, um, foreign involvement in the perpetual insurgency going on in our country, and we do not have to look too far. The Americans are only interested in their interest. They want to continue to be the ready-made market for people in our country. As our people are going abroad in the name of Japa, or what many people call economic immigration, it makes them happy because they do not want the continent of Africa, where more than two-thirds of the big resources of the world, mineral resources, are located. They do not want stability in those countries. They would rather sponsor insurrection, insurgency, so that those countries will not have peace. Because if they have peace and they have a succession of good leaders, they know that they will not have any reason to depend on the West. So I believe that the claims made by Scott Perry, made by Elon Musk, are claims that are not far-fetched.
Absolutely.
They have to be investigated. Yeah.
That's right. So the US has spent billions on counterterrorism efforts in Africa, including through programs like the Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Partnership. So if USAID funds were indeed diverted, what does this say about the effectiveness of US counterterrorism strategies in Africa? And how should African countries, especially ECOWAS, respond to these, especially in the wake of the Sahelian countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, is it Chad, that are kicking out France on a very similar allegation?
Yes, France will claim that it loves its previous colonies, but everyone knows that what France is doing is simply to exploit those countries. They are exploiting the resources of those countries. They want to have unfettered access to the mineral resources of those countries. Now, those countries are becoming wiser now, and they know that for their own prosperity to be assured, they need to expel the French from their countries. And it's happening one after another. These African countries are turning against France because they can see that the French have nothing to offer other than promoting violence, promoting instability in those countries. The people have a right to determine who their leaders should be, not the French, not the Americans, not the Britons. And I know that these concerns that Scott Perry had raised will not simply be brushed aside. And Elon Musk also said the same thing, that they are carrying out rogue operations similar to what the CIA does. So all of the money that they claim that they have spent in Nigeria, people can't see all of this money. If you released $7.8 billion to Nigeria, if you claim that you spent 7.8 billion between 2014 and 2023, then we need to see what exactly these monies were spent on. That is the point. Otherwise, one will be led to believe that a good portion of the money had been used to indeed sponsor terrorism, sponsor instability in Nigeria, just as we are seeing in Mali, Burkina Faso, many of the
Sure.
countries not far away from us.
Right. So let me take one or two comments. Evangelist Julius Omorugbe says, only God knows what Boko Haram would have done to Nigeria and West African nations if Donald Trump didn't help Nigeria with weapons. Promise John says, Obajide, good evening. You are doing a great job. May God continue to bless you. Amen. Evangelist Julius, okay, he said, Abdullahi Kashim Ibrahim says, well done, Babajide. Keep doing the good work. May God bless you with a long life, best of health, and a prosperous future. Amen. Uluwole Oke says, okay, knowing what they have done at other countries in destabilizing them, they can definitely do this to Nigeria as well. Nelson Adufe says, I'm not convinced that the claim is true. However, Scott Perry and Elon Musk should be investigated because we should be aware and alerted of the national blackmail to win the hearts of Nigeria and Africa. So another comment from another source, James Patterson says, if this is true, it wouldn't be the first time the US has played both sides. They fund conflicts and then swoop in as saviors, classic imperialism. Fatima Hassan says, so the US can send billions to fight terrorism, but also accidentally fund terrorists. And we wonder why Boko Haram keeps resurfacing despite all the so-called counterterrorism efforts. And okay, so my question to you, BKO, I'll take other comments later on. If this allegation, do you think this allegation is far-fetched, especially considering the US government's continued funding of the Israeli regime under the Benjamin Netanyahu, providing bombs and ammunition that have killed thousands of women, children, aid workers, and journalists? Despite Netanyahu ignoring the ICC's invitation, he still enjoys unwavering US support. So given these patterns of US, double standard, could it be plausible that American aid, whether through USAID or other channels, have inadvertently or deliberately ended up in supporting terrorist groups like Boko Haram? Looking at some of these that we are seeing on the international screen, like Al Jazeera, BBC, and some other Western media, bringing us this news as they happen.
You see, whether we like it or not, some of the actions of Israel are terrorist in nature. When you bomb habitations of kids, of women, that's no longer a war. It's a genocide. And there have been so many of such cases reported. Video evidence provided and all that. Sometimes even journalists are targeted and killed. Like journalists from Al Jazeera, once they know that, oh, these people will not see things their own way. And America continues to support Israel. Just look at what Trump said recently, that he was going to relocate the people of Gaza. And was telling the Jordanians to be ready to receive them. Why would any world leader speak in this manner? And he has also issued direct threat to Hamas. I do not like Hamas. I believe that a lot of their leaders are bare-faced terrorists. But you can also not fail to recognize the fact that in that region where they found themselves, the barrel of the gun actually rules. So some of the actions are dictated by the actions of Israel that has occupied their lands for many years. Israel fights with the Arab states, and when it wins, it seizes their land and begins to build buildings on such lands. The Golan Heights, for example, Israel seized it from Syria after the 1967 war. And despite all United Nations resolutions, they've refused to return those occupied lands. And America would always back Israel. When there's an attempt to hold Israel account, America will use its veto to protect Israel. So many people thought that Trump come to whip Israel into line. They've been disappointed because you can see the bare-faced support for Israel that Trump has demonstrated, even punishing a United Nations agency for taking a stand against Israel. So the Americans, just like the French, are hypocrites. Anybody who believes them or believes that they cannot subvert African nations is somebody who is very poor in history. Some of Africa's best leaders have been eliminated because they felt that they were too radical. Patrice
Mohammed
Lumumba comes
Gaddafi,
to
for
mind.
instance.
Yes, Patrice Lumumba comes to mind because he was just too radical. You know, they will take out such a person. Look at the problem that they caused in Libya. After trying to cause regime change by other means, they eventually declared a war and left that country. Well. Yes, they left that country in a bad state. And when they chase away these leaders, they give us terrible leaders in return. Look, can you compare Blaise Compaoré with Thomas Sankara, for example? Because that was the direct opposite of Sankara. So they do not mean well for us. Anybody who, if their own countrymen are questioning where the so-called funds are being used, and they are saying, okay, they said they built projects, 120 schools in Pakistan, and there is no evidence that any school was built. You will know that it was just a small screen to funnel money to anti-government forces, to terrorists, to ensure that instability reigns in that country. And Pakistan is not far from Afghanistan, so they can actually move money even from there to cause disruptions in neighboring Afghanistan. So they do this. They've been doing it for long. But it's just recently that an American will come out to say, look, this is what you've done. And he gave instances. He gave instances. So I'm convinced that to a large extent, this is true. What we must not do is to imagine that these people love us, they want our progress. No, they do not. And they have no business getting involved in the leadership of our country, trying to determine who rules us, which leader emerges. You can imagine when John Kerry came to Nigeria. John Kerry had made up his mind, just like the Americans, that there has to be regime change, that Jonathan had to go. I'm not saying Jonathan's government was a perfect government. Yes, corruption was rife. But it's not in America's place to come and determine who our next president should be, or whether there should be regime change in Nigeria. It's not in their place. The same people refuse to sell weapons to us. They call Obama African president from America. But what did Obama do for us? Obama refused to sell weapons. They were the people who caused the crisis in Libya, and now they've not been able to solve the problem. The country is broken into different parts, ruled by gunmen. That was a country with stability. They succeeded in creating crisis, and then they left the place. They've done the same thing in Syria. We've done it in Yemen, Sudan. I do not have complete evidence that this is what is going on, but I have no reason to dismiss the what the American congressman has said. I have no reason at all to dismiss.
Right, right. Biko, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
That's right. That's right. So let me take one or two comments and then I ask my last question because of our time. Kukutum says the fact that that they never designated Boko Haram as a terrorist group, that is unacceptable. When America did sponsor terrorist group in Syria, what did we expect? Evangelist Julius, okay, no. Nelson Adife says Evangelist Julius, okay, no. I think some people are actually attacking themselves here. Kukutum also said America is like Chancellor Palpatine of the Galactic Republic in Star Wars, but also the Dark Lord, using the separatists to attack the Republic. Ruthless America. Okay, so Nelson Adife says, VKO, please go and lecture history in universities and write books on history for secondary school students. You are wealthy in history, even across the world. Thank you very much, VKO can hear that. So they are requesting that you take on additional task beyond seeing you analyze, trending issues on TV and online. Timothy Adegbite says, thanks, BKO, for the insightful and great analysis, as always. You're very much appreciated. And also, let me take this comment here. Sophia McGregor says, just like they arm Israel to commit war crimes, now we're hearing they might have helped Boko Haram too. The US isn't fighting terrorism, they are managing it. Mohammed Suleiman says, Boko Haram has been terrorizing Nigeria for over a decade. If US money has been reaching them, then who in Nigeria is facilitating it? Corruption plays a big role too. Okay, so this person is saying that US couldn't have been doing this without having someone collaborating with them from within Africa, Nigeria, for instance. I asked the question earlier, and I think you've not really answered that, as to how should African countries react vis-a-vis what Mohammed Sulaiman is saying, that there must have been internal collaborators from within Nigeria and Africa at large. So how should they handle this? So that if we don't need US, probably we don't need some of these Westerners. I mean, these Western countries are former colonialists. What should we do? Mikhail, final question.
We have to look for internal means to solve our problems. We need good leadership. Nigeria has no business taking aid from these countries of the world because we are too blessed as a country. We are blessed with fantastic weather. We are a country that should be able to feed itself. If Indians can feed themselves, if Indians can grow as much rice as they are growing, what is our problem? 2 states in Nigeria can grow all the rice that we need. Just 2 states, Niger and Borno State, they can grow all the rice that we need. Kaduna State and probably 2 more states can grow all the maize that we need. You go to the Saminaka area in Kaduna, they grow maize on a very big scale. If we have good leaders, the potential of our country is tremendous. But we've never really been fortunate to have the kind of leaders that can make tremendous change happen in our country. We don't need aid from any of these people, any of these countries. And when they talk about internal collaborators, of course, we do have 400 Boko Haram funders of Boko Haram were arrested in UAE and sent to Nigeria for trial. 400. I'm not saying 40. People were sending money to Boko Haram for them to continue to destabilize our country. 400. UAE arrested them, sent them to Nigeria. If it was Chad, by now they will have executed all of them. Those that Chad arrested for being members of Boko Haram, they didn't waste time. They were killed by firing squad. So there are collaborators within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. Those ones they were sending money from UAE, sending foreign exchange to Boko Haram to fund terrorism, and these guys were arrested and sent to Nigeria. So we want to see our country jail those people so that others can learn. So the Americans there's no time, there's no way they won't use people from within our country. You know, look at what Scott Perry says. Somebody else got the money. You are paying for terrorism. This has got to end. Because there's no proof that those projects that they claimed you said was there's no proof that those projects happened. They said there's no school. They claimed they built 120 schools in Pakistan. I said there's zero evidence. Let somebody else fact check him and show to the world that he lied. So if there's no evidence of such spending, then where did the money go? I don't think true patriots will get up and lie against their country. That's why I'm worried. That's why I'm worried. And America has a history of subverting governments around the world. They have a history. They have a history. So I'm not surprised at all. I'm just worried. Just worried. But our leaders must know that these people do not mean well. They have to provide good leadership. Good leadership will bring about real growth and development. And we won't need these foreign powers. We won't need them. We need homegrown solution to our problems. We won't need them. And we don't need them.
That's right. Richard Cohen says, if USAID is guilty of this, then every Western aid agency needs to be scrutinized. How much of this so-called humanitarian assistance is really just geopolitical manipulation? Amina Yusuf says, the US funds Israel's war crimes and now possibly Boko Haram. Africa needs to wake up and stop relying on Western aid. It's never truly free. Anthony Rodriguez says, this is why so many don't trust the US government. They claim to fight terror, but always seem to be involved in funding it. Wake up, people. And then finally, Festus Iyobosa says, if Obama cannot come and explain to Nigerians how they form Boko Haram, oh well. Evangelist Julius Murray says, we really need visionary leaders. Nigeria, Africa has what it takes. And Prayers of the Nature says they didn't build any school in Afghanistan. The American government is like this from Nicaragua to Chile and Panama. Well, that's our show for today's edition of Issues with JIDE. Special thanks to you, Babajide Kolade Tutoju, for those insightful analyses, as always.
Thank you, Brian. I say a big thank you to our viewers. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being perpetually glued to our program. God bless you.
Right. And I say thank you to our audience for keeping our company on every edition. You can see the program again anytime by subscribing to our YouTube channel, TVC News Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button to get the latest information. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at TVC News NG. I'm also at Ibrahim_Shita. On behalf of the rest of the team, I'm Ibrahim Shita. See you again next edition. Bye for now.